morning, we are continuing on Masechet Berachot, and we are starting the third Perek in Hashem, the Perek of Misha Meto Mutar Lefanav, and we are on Daf Yud Zayin Amud Bet. The learnings of the month of Av has been dedicated generously by the Bayan Far family. We're going to have the details of, there we go, for the health and happiness of the children, Rafaela Miriam Bat Sipora, Chana Bat Sipora, Emuna Rachel Bat Sipora, and Sophia Sarah Bat Sipora, and for the Fashal of Shefa Bat Nechamam. Bezrat Hashem, that should have a complete refuah shlema. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, Misha Meto Mutar Lefanav, the Mishnah, the first Mishnah in third Perek. Somebody that has Rahman Litzlan, a family member, a close family member that has passed, and now he is in the state that we call in Halacha Aninut, Onen. Onen means a person that has had one of the 7 close relatives pass and has not yet been buried. The 7 close relatives being father, mother, brother, sister, son, daughter, and husband or wife, spouse. Those are the 7. So if you have one of those, Rahman al-Islam, that has not been buried yet, patur mikriyat Shema, is patur from saying Shema, and not only that, but you patur from tefillah, from tefillin, mikol mitzvot ha'amurot b'Torah. He is effectively, completely patur from all of the mitzvot of the Torah. Of course, he cannot do any averot, but the positive mitzvot he is patur from. Nosei hamita. Now, in the process of funeral, in the process of burial, nosei hamita vechidufehen. They used to back in the day. They would not put it on, a hearse or on the wheels. They did it themselves. They would do it on the ketef, and 6 people, 4 people, depending on how many people you needed, they would carry it. And as they would get tired, other people would take it. There would be a line of people that would be melave the met, melave the aron, the coffin, and they would basically go switch around from people who have done it already. They have paid their respect to the met, to the people who have not yet done it. Basically, it would be, you have the mitah would start from the people who are going with it, and as they would get tired, it would be passed back, or they would switch. And the people who have done it would be in front of the coffin, in front of the mitah, what we call, and the people who haven't done it yet would be behind the aron, behind the coffin. That's how the structure was, as you're going to see in the Mishnah. That helps you understand the rest of the Mishnah. Says the Mishnah, Nosei hamita vechilufehen, vechilufehen, people who are carrying the aron, and the chilufehen, the ones who would exchange with them. Rashi says, Sheken derech shemitchalefin laset lefisha kol chafesin lizkot ba. The derech was that people would stand in line, so to speak, to get the zchut. It's not because those people got tired. You see, the mindset is very different. The mindset is not because those 6, those 4 are going to get tired, but because I want to do a hesed shel emet. This is what we call, when Yaakov Avinu tells Yosef HaTzadik, at his deathbed, he said, Allah tikbereni b'Mitzrayim, says, please don't bury me in Mitzrayim. And he calls it chesed ve'emet. Do chesed, kindness, ve'emet, truth. Rashi there says, brings the Chazal, that chesed she'osim im hametim, the chesed that you do with a deceased is called chesed shel emet, the true chesed. Why? Because hopefully you're not expecting any return. Now these people could be very creative and say, well, his second cousin, 5 times removed, is a rich guy, and I'm going to show up there. But generally speaking, you're not expecting anything back. So that's called chesed shel emet. It's a pure chesed. And you want to be zochet to do chesed. Bnei Yisrael are gomlei hasadim, bnei gomlei hasadim. So therefore, people would stand in line to be able to be zochet, have the schut of doing the chesed shel emet. So chilufehen vechilufeh chilufehen, even the ones afterwards. So et shelifnei hamita vet shelachar hamita. You have the ones who are in front of the coffin, as we explained, that they've done it already. And the ones who are behind. Those who are behind the mitah, even if they are needed, to be carrying it soon, then they are pturim. They're patur from saying Shema. Those who are behind, sorech bahen chayavim. Even if you need them, they're chayavim because they already have paid their respect. This is the way Rashi understands it. The Tosafot asks the obvious question. So wait a second. If there is sorech bahem, if you need them right now, for whatever reason be, even though that they have paid their respect already to the deceased, if you need them, why are they chayavim? They should be patur also. So Tosafot reads it a little bit different. So it says, regardless of if you're in front of the mitah or you're in the back of the mitah, doesn't make a difference. Your position versus the aron, the coffin. If you're needed, you are patur. If you're not needed, you're chayav. That's how the Tosafot understands. Says the Gemara. Both of them, both the ones in front and in the back, pturim minat tefillah, they are patur from the tefillah, to which Rashi says the reason that they are patur from tefillah is the lav deoraita, because it's not biblical. Tefillah is not biblical. Now, this is very not doing justice really to this concept, because the question whether or not tefillah is a mitzvah deoraita or not is a massive debate and dispute between the Rishonim. Is known as the machloket Ramban and Rambam. Rambam holds davening once a day is a mitzvah deoraita. Ule'ovdo bechol levavchem ezehu avodah shri balev izu tefillah. Gemara says in the beginning of Masechet Tanit bet. So you see, which is a commandment from the Torah, it seems like, is the mitzvah of davening. So Rambam says once a day, it's a mitzvah deoraita. Ramban says no. The mitzvah of is not the direct thing to tefillah. So therefore, he says the mitzvah of tefillah is a mitzvah derabanan. Twice a day used to be a chiyuv, and the tefillah of Arvid used to be reshut, but now we have accepted that upon ourselves also as an obligation. But you have to understand that even Ramban agrees that if you're in etzara, if you're in a difficulty, and you know the Sarah soreretchem, you have war going on, being attacked, you're in trouble, that he also agrees that's a mitzvah deoraita to daven to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? So again, that's something that we're going to be discussing in the fifth parak when we get to the parak that discusses the entire parak. Basically, is dedicated to discussing tefillah. We're going to elaborate on this more than just one line of Rashi. But be that as it may, they're patur from tefillah, says the Mishnah. Kavru et hamet vechazru. When they already buried and they're coming back. Im yechol. So what was the minhag? The minhag was they would do the burial. They will finish filling up the grave. Then they would come to give the initial comfort to the family, right? The nichum avedim, the initial nichum avedim would be there. Would be a shura that would go and comfort the bereaved. They comfort the mourners. Says the Mishnah. If you're going back now, if you have enough time to start Shema and finish Shema, which we're going to see details of this later, until you have not yet gotten to the Shura, you have not gotten to this line of people, which would be nowadays they do a straight line. Back in the time, the way the Shorim explained, it was a circle, but we'll call the line. If you have enough time to start and finish Shema before you get to the line, Hayavim. then yatchilu, you have to start. Ve'im lav, if you don't have enough time, lo yatchilu. If you can't finish, you shouldn't start either. Ha'omdim b'shura, now imagine you're standing in the shura already. So then, what's the pshat? What's the halacha? Ha'penimiim, those who are inside, that means the averim already, you can see them. So then it's not kavod. It's not right to start saying Shema when you're in front of the averim, turim. Then you're patur. V'achitzonim, the ones who are outside, chayavim. They are obligated. Okay, so that is the Mishnah. It's a little technical, the first Mishnah, but as we're going to see, it's going to be an amazing Gemara following, and today's Amud is not going to have much Agata. Tomorrow's Amud is going to be filled with classic Agatas, including whether or not the deceased know what's happening in this world, which is an amazing question, an amazing debate in the Gemara. Everyone that comes after the funeral, they want to know, does my father, mother, whatever it is, do they know what's happening with me? Do they know what I'm doing for them, and so on and so forth? That's going to be a discussion for tomorrow. So let's begin the Gemara. Says the Gemara. So mutar lefanav in, v'sheno mutar lefanav lo. Gemara says the first three words of the Mishnah says misha meto mutar lefanav. Someone that their deceased relative is laying in front of them. So it seems to indicate that if it's laying in front of you, that's the only time that you're patur from saying Shema and Tefillah and all the other ones. But if it's not literally in front of you, even though that he hasn't been buried yet, you're just in a different room, you should be hayav. That's the indication of the simple read of the Gemara, the Mishnah, the first three or four words. Says the Gemara, or mini, that's problematic. Why? Because I will show you a different Tanaic word, a different Gemara, a different Braita that seems to indicate not like that. Zok the Gemara, Misha meto mutar lefanav, someone that has their deceased relative right laying in front of them, not buried yet. Ochel bebayit acher, you cannot eat in front of the corpse. It's not kavod. It's not derech eretz. You can't eat in front of it, so you go to a different room. Bayit acher, bayit. You see from the Shulchan Aruch, also in the Rishonim, the Shulchan Aruch as well, in Siman Kuf Ayin Het, the bayit sometimes just means a cheder. Go to a different cheder. Go to a different room, not in front of the deceased, not in front of the corpse. So says the Gemara. If you don't have any other room to go to, you go knock on your friend's home and say, can I come eat here? Basically, you go somewhere else. If you don't have that possibility, you make a division. You make one of these Chinese mechitzas, right? That there's something dividing between the corpse and the person, and then he could eat. And if you don't have anything to make a mechitza with, then you turn away from the corpse and you eat. And of course, you don't do heseva, you don't lean on your left, like we do by Leil Pesach, you don't do any of that. And you cannot eat meat, and you cannot drink wine, and you don't say bracha when you want to start hamotzi, when you want to start the seudah, you don't say bracha, the charishona. And he doesn't bench when he eats, when he's finished eating, even though that he ate bread and Birkat Hamazon, normally speaking, would be a biblical mitzvah. Still, don't eno mezamen. He does not say Birkat Hamazon. Ve'en mevarachin alav, and others don't have to say bracha for him either. It's not that. Well, don't say hamotzi, but make sure to wait for somebody that says hamotzi. He'll have you in mind. No, you don't even need that. You just eat without bracha. Ve'en mezamenin alav, and he's not even counted as a person that you could include in your zimun as 3 or 10, whatever it is. You can't even count him for zimun. Okay. By the way, Rashi, the last Rashi in Amud Bet here says, The language of Rashi is you don't have to say Birkat Hamazon, which indicates if you want to, you could. This long tosfot over here that you see, part of what it starts is he brings this Rashi, he makes this diuk, and it says absolutely not. He's not allowed to. Not that if he could, if he wants, he could opt for saying Birkat Hamazon. He's not allowed to say Birkat Hamazon, right? So says the Gemara, that's talachah. The onen Achmar litzlan does not say brachot. So says the Gemara, he's not counted as the zimun. Upatur mikriyat shema uminat tefillah, and now you see the identical part with our Mishnah that he's patur from kriyat shema, from tefillah, from tefillin, umikol mitzvot ha'amurot b'Torah, and from all the mitzvot that are in the Torah. Right now, before we finish this braita, what does it sound like he's saying? He said, if you don't have a place, if you don't have another room, you go to your friend's house, right? Or to a different room in your house. So it's no longer the deceased, the corpse is no longer in front of him. And yet, it seems like the rest of the Braita says, even though that's not in front of you, you're patur from Kriyat Shema, from Tefillah, from Tefillah. That's how it seems like. Now, you could push back and say, no. This information is going back on the beginning of the Braita. In other words, the Braita tells you, if the corpse is in front of you, don't eat in front of it, right? Go to somewhere else. And also, if the corpse is in front of you, don't say Shema, you're patur from Shema, from Tefillah, all that. It's going back in the beginning. You could say that. But the Gemara, for our purposes, is reading the regular read. It says, well, the Braita seems to say, if you have a dead body in front of you, you have to go elsewhere to eat. And you're also patur from saying Shema and Tefillah, Tefillin, which seems to say that even if you are in a different room, you're still patur. Which now, it becomes the question, right? Our Mishnah, we made a diuk. We read it carefully and we said, Mishnah matom mutar lefanav, that only when it's in front of you, you're patur from Shema and all the other things, which indicates if you go to a different room, you're hayav, you're obligated. Now this Braita seems to indicate that even if you're elsewhere, so long as the corpse has not been buried yet, you are obligated, right? That's the question the Gemara wants to ask. There's going to be two ways to get out of this question. One is what I just mentioned, right? It says, no, it's going back on the beginning of the Mishnah. They're both saying the same thing, that only when it's in front of you, you're patur, right? And if you're elsewhere, you're chayav. Or the main answer of the Gemara, the second answer of the Gemara is going to be, you're making too much of an exact read. When it says, Misha metov mutar lefanav, doesn't mean the corpse is right in front of your face. It means it's upon you, it hasn't been buried yet, it's upon you to bury the deceased, and your mind is occupied, just like we learned by a hatan, right? Remember hatan, the first night, and even second, third, and fourth night, he is patur from Shema. Why? Because his mind is occupied. Even if he's not in front of the kala, still the mind is occupied, therefore he patur. So what I says here also, it will be a patur because your mind is busy with the needs of the funeral. So therefore, even if it's not literally sitting in front of you, you're still pat. That would be the second answer. So we went a lot ahead of ourselves. We're going to read this inside. But now this also, all of this that I just said is to show you the contrast that the Gemara wants to bring. But we're smack in the middle of reading the second Braita, and we haven't finished it yet. So in the second Braita, says the Gemara, so you can't have wine and all that, and you're patur from Kriyat Shema, uminat tefillah, uminat tefillin, third line of the Gemara, umikol mitzvot ha'amurot b'Torah, is patur from all the mitzvot mentioned in the Torah. Shabbat, the Braita says, but in Shabbat, he nicely leans in, and eats. He does heseva, ve'ochel basar, and he eats good meat, v'shot yayin, He drinks wine, umevarech, and he says bracha, umesamen, and he benches, he says Birkat Hamazon, umevarachin alav. You could say for him, umesamen alav. You in the Birkat Hamazon as well. V'chayav b'kol mitzvot ha'amurot b'Torah, and he is obligated in all the mitzvot that the Torah says on Shabbat, even though that the relative has not been buried yet. You're chayav in all the mitzvot. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel says, mitoch shenitchayev ba'elu. Once he's chayav in all of this, nitchayev bekulan. He is chayav in everything. How do you understand? Yeah, on Shabbat. How do you understand that? Chachamim just said, you're chayav bekol mitzvot ha'amurot b'Torah. You're obligated to do all the mitzvot of the Torah, right? And then Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel says, not only that, but he's chayav in everything. What? Include the Rabbanans, Mr. Abraham says. Anyone wants to disagree? The minhag is you could throw things here also if you're upset. So, says the Gemara says like this. What's the difference? The Gemara asks you, so wait a second, how do you understand this? You just told me he's chayav in everything. So what's Rabban Shimon adding? What do you mean? Once it's chayav to this, it's chayav bekulan. What does that mean? Says the Gemara. Rabbi Yochanan said, "My benayhu." What is the difference? They're seemingly saying the same exact thing. What do you mean he's chayav in everything? Says the Gemara, it's talking about marital relationships. In other words, there's avedut that is open, beparesia, and there is avedut of sinah, things that nobody sees, right? Oftentimes, and that seems to be the halacha, that even on Shabbat, averut b'sinah still is applicable. Things that nobody sees. Nobody sees if you have changed your undershirt, right? If the Aved is wearing the shirt that he ripped by the funeral, so that's of course obvious, and that's averut the farasya. So he changes that. He wears his Shabbat suit and tie and everything. But who's there to see if he changed his undershirt? Nobody's there to see it unless he spells, which you're not supposed to, right? But short of that, that would be considered avelut b'sinah, or marital relationships. That's avelut b'sinah. So says Rabbi Yochanan, you know the difference of Tanakama and Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel is Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel holds that you're hayav with tashmish hamita as well. It's a mitzvah of ona. Right? Mitzvah ona is a chiyuv, is an obligation of the husband, and therefore that also you're chayav, even though that is avelut b'sinah, even though that it is something of mourning in private that nobody would know, you still would be chayav. That's the difference between Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel and Tanakama. Tanakama holds your patur, and Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel holds your chayav. Says the Gemara. Katani mihat. Now that we finished bringing the Braita, you see that it says in the Braita, patur mikriyat shema u'minat tefillah u'minat tefillin, that the guy, even though that he went to the next door neighbors to eat suda, he's still patur from Birkat Hamazon, he's still patur from Shema and tefillin and tefillah and all of that. Umikol mitzvot ha'amurot b'Torah. So we're going to have two answers to this. Amar Papa, Tirgama, you have to translate this. You have to say that this is talking about the case that the guy has no place to go, has no divider to put, and he's sitting in the same room with the corpse, and he is turning around to eat. And on that, the Braita says, you're patur from tefillin and tefillah and shema and all that. But if you go elsewhere, then you would be hayav. So that would be aligned with the diuk that we made on the first words of our Mishnah, Mishnah Meto Mutal Lefanav, that you're only patur if the corpse is literally sitting in front of you. Right? Now, both our Mishnah and this Braita, both of them are saying the same thing, that you're only patur if the corpse is in front of you, right? Or you have to say absolutely not like that. The second answer would be no. Even if it's not in front of you, as long as the corpse has not been buried, you are patur from Kriyat Shema, Tefillah, tefillin, and all of the mitzvot. What is that? Let's see. Rav Ashi Amar, Kevan shemutal alav nekovro, mutal lefanav does not mean it's hanging in front of you. Mutal lefanav means mutal alav. It's your obligation. It's part of your responsibility to see to it that this body is buried. Kevan shemutal alav nekovro. Once it's on him to bury it, kemutal lefanav dami. It's tantamount that it is right in front of you. So even if you're in a different house, you're miles away from it, but you are working to see to it that this is going to be buried properly, is considered mutar lefanav, and therefore you're patur from Shema and Tefillah and all the other ones.
What if a person works in the mortuary? Are they constantly?
We're going to discuss that. Says the Gemara, Ke mutar lefanav da mishnemar, as we have a pasuk by Avraham Avinu, a story that we know very well. Vayakom Avraham al bnei meto, Sarah Imenu died, and Avraham Avinu was mourning for her, eulogizing her. Vayavo Avraham lifkot leSarah, lispot leSarah v'lifkota. And then he says, Vayakom Avraham al bnei meto. He gets up from the corpse, al bnei meto, from the deceased, Sarah Imenu. And then he goes to Benechet. So it's no longer, the body of Sarah is no longer there, right? And what does it say over there? Let me please bury my deceased wife, milefanai, from in front of me, he says, right? So was it lefanav? No. But still it says lefanai because it's mutal alav. It's his responsibility to do it. Whenever it's considered his responsibility to do, it is as if it's in front of him. And that's why it says lefanai, kol zaman shemutal alav nekovro, any moment that it is incumbent upon him, it is his responsibility to bury him, kemutal lefanav dami. It's considered as though it's sitting in front of him. Okay, so that's the first part. Now, the second diuk that we're going to make on the language of the Mishnah is meto'in aval meshamero lo. Because see, the second word of our Mishnah is misha meto mutar lefanav. Someone that his deceased relative is in front of him. So how about if it's not your relative, but you are being the guard over the body, right? Or you work in a morgue, in a cemetery, whatever it is. So you don't know this guy, just know he's a Jewish guy, and you're the guard at night to make sure that no animals are going to come upon it, no rats, no dogs, whatever it is. You're shomer the body overnight. Are you chayav to do Shema or not? So says the Gemara, it seems from our Mishnah that's only if it's meto, if it's your relative. But if you're guarding it, no. Gemara says, is that true? I have a contradictory passage that I'm going to read to you, says the Gemara, that seems to indicate that even if you're just a guarding agent, still you will be patur, says the Gemara. V'hatanya, we learned in the Braita, someone that is guarding the corpse, the deceased, afal pi she'eno meto, even though that it's not his relative, patur mikriyat shema minat tefillah minat tefillin. He's patur from shema tefillah and tefillin, all of that. Umikol mitzvot ha'amurot patur, from all the mitzvot. So says the Gemara, meshamero afal pi she'eno meto, meto afal pi she'eno meshamero. I says, yes, you're correct. Both of the Braitas are right. And each one of them is indicating a different halacha. The first one, our Mishnah is saying meto, that if it's your relative, even if you're not tasked with taking care of it, still you're patur. Even if you're not there, you're going home at night, you have to say Shema, you're not guarding it, someone else is guarding it in the morning. Still you're patur. Because you are a shura rishona, a close relative. And meshamero.
We could prove the previous without the pasuk from the Torah. We describe that.
Correct. Yeah, correct. But again, this is the complete picture, right? Complete picture is meshamero afar pi she'eno meto. That even if you are not a relative, but if the moment that you're tasked with taking care of the body, then you become patur, even if you're not a relative. So both of them are true. Says the Gemara, you're going to suggest that's only if you're tasked with taking care of it, or you're a relative. But if you're just walking and happen to be walking in the Bet HaKvarot, you could do the mitzvot. Ba'atanya. We learned in the Braita that even that's not the case. You should not walk through the cemetery, the Bet HaKvarot, while having tefillin on your head. The Sefer Torah or you're holding a Sefer Torah, the Koren, and you're reading. And if you're doing that, if you do that, you are transgressing the pasuk that says, if you mock the poor man, if you make fun of the badbach, the poor guy that can't do mitzvot, you're disgracing the maker of that person. You're disgracing Hashem, right? In other words, you're going lametim hafshi. A person that dies, unfortunately, has no ability to do any other mitzvah. Done. Opportunity, time is up. Here you could do mitzvah every second. Say the Gaon, when he was passing, he was holding the tzitzit and he was crying. So why are you crying? He said, not because any Abraham says every second I'm alive, I have the tzitzit, I'm doing a mitzvah. In the world to come, there's absolutely no opportunity to do mitzvah. It's crying from losing the opportunity. It's so easy to do mitzvah here. So there, you're going to Bet HaKvarot as if you're flaunting to the deceased. You say, I have tzitzit, I have tefillin, I'm reading Torah. That's not. It's disrespectful to the deceased when you are basically looks like you're mocking them, that they're unable to do the mitzvah.
Only if they know what happens in this.
So well, we gotta get there. Hatam, that's exactly what bridges our Gemara to the Agata that I just mentioned in the beginning of the show. So it says the Gemara, Hatam toch arba amot hu asur. There is only when you're within 4 amot, 6 feet from the kever. But chutz arba amot, if you're outside 6 feet, outside 4 amot, then you're hayav. Then you could do mitzvot and no problem. Damar more, as we've learned. Met tofes arba amot the kriyat shema. A dead body, or for that matter, even if he's 6 feet down, buried in cemetery, it takes 4 amot around it. So within the 4 amot from kever, you cannot do it. You cannot say shema. You cannot do mitzvot of that nature. You cannot flaunt basically your ability to do mitzvot. Here, even if you're outside Dalet Amot, you're still patur because you're guarding the body, or you're a karov, you are a relative. Fine. Gufa says the Gemara. We learned in the Mishnah, Hameshamer Tamet, Afar Pisheino Meto Patur. We learned right there just a minute ago that if you are guarding the deceased, you're patur from Kriyat Shema and Tefillah and Tefillin, and from all the mitzvot Amurot Torah. Now, Hayushinayim. If you have 2 people who are guarding it, then they could take turns. Like we had it before in digging a grave, right? Now it's the same thing. If you're guarding the body, one person guards. One of them guards, the other guy gets out of the room and says Shema. And then they switch. Ben Azai says, if they are on a boat, they're delivering, they're transferring the body, and it's on a boat, then you just put the body on a corner in the ship, and both of them together could leave the body and go daven or say Shema. So my Benai, it seems like Ben Azai is arguing with Chachamim. In other words, Chachamim say no. Even in the boat, on the boat, you have to switch. You can't both leave the guy and go daven. So what's the machloket? Says the Gemara, Amar Ravina. Ravina says, Chosheshi la'achbarim hika b'nayim. The question is, are you concerned about rats and different animals that could disrespect the body on a boat, right? Depends how infested your society is with rats. So if you are concerned that even on a boat you have different creatures that could be disrespectful for the body, then the Chachamim are concerned about it. The Chachamim say, therefore, even on a boat, you should always have a guardian. You should always have someone watching the body, and you cannot leave him both. And Ben Azai says, no, you don't have to be concerned about achbarim, about rats on a ship. There are no rats on the ship. Just put them on the side, you go daven and you come back. No problem. Says the Gemara. More savar chashinan, more savar lo chashinan. One holds that you are concerned, the other one holds you not. If you're carrying the bones, they used to do this in Baras and Babatra, they would bury in actually, horizontally in walls of caves. And sometimes after a few years, they would switch the bones and take it to Kever Avot. So if you are doing that, you should not put them in a sack, in a bag, and put it under the saddle on top of the donkey and ride on top of it, sit on top of the saddle that's on top of the bones, and you should ride on a horse or on a donkey. Because that's considered disrespect, of course. And if you're afraid that you're going to be attacked by the goyim or by robbers, then mutar. Then it's mutar to even ride on top of the bones, on top of your donkey or your animal and run away. I have to finish this. And just like they said it by bones, the same halacha is with Sefer Torah as well. So says the Gemara, wait a second. On what part of this Braita you're comparing the Sefer Torah? You're saying that you can't put it on your donkey and sit on top of the Sefer Torah? That's pashut. Of course, that's disrespectful, right? If it's going on the beginning of the Braita, which would indicate that you cannot put the Sefer Torah on your donkey and sit on top of the Sefer Torah, pshita. Of course, that's pashut. Migara Sefer Torah ma'atzamot. You want to suggest that Sefer Torah should be any less than bones? Of course, it's disrespectful to sit on top of a Sefer Torah. Ela Sefer. So it's going on the Sefer. That means if you are carrying a Sefer Torah and all of a sudden you see the robbers are coming, you can jump on your horse, sit on top of the Sefer Torah and run away, and that would be mutar as well, because again, you're doing it for a legitimate reason. And Be'ezrat Hashem, we're going to get to this the Lo'eg Larash Cheref Oseu, which basically bridges to a fascinating piece of Agata tomorrow morning.
Guys, we have to use self-incarceration stuff.